Hello and welcome back to the Talk Norwich City podcast for episode number 85. We're closing in on 100. We will get there eventually. To the left of me is, I'm going to call you a Maverick. Are you happy with that?
Oh, Maverick.
Have you been called a Maverick before?
He was in Top Gun.
He was.
So I'll take any Top Gun reference,
Dave Carolan, nice to see you, my friend. How are you?
I'm very good. I'm very good. Relaxed.
Yeah, good.
Having spent a little bit of time away from this mad football world.
Well, that's good. You were at Carrow Road at the weekend. I love, most guests usually turn up with a bottle of champagne or a bottle of wine. It's fine that you didn't bring that.
Yeah.
You brought a notebook.
It's so not fine.
I'll bring my notebook, I'm always making notes. Yeah.
Where's the
Who did you bring
though?
champagne for?
Galton brought champagne. Galton Blackiston.
Have you been to Morston Hall?
Yes.
Yeah. I turned up at Morston Hall. We had the year we got promoted, we had a...
Was it a promotion party?
It wasn't a promotion party. No, it was a staff get together, and Galton hosted us in Morston Hall.
Yeah.
And we all had to submit our, dietary choices before we went. And I forgot to include my wife's, and she's vegetarian. Ooh. So we turn up at Morston Hall, and we all have the aperitifs beforehand. And Gordon brings out the food, and I haven't ordered anything for my wife, but he made a risotto for my wife in about 5 minutes. And
good man,
seriously,
Galton, top man,
unbelievable guy.
Yeah. It's a good night, isn't it? It's a good night at Morston.
Yeah, everyone should go to Morston Hall at least once.
Well, you're now invited to the exclusive TNC promotion party at Morston Hall.
Oh, excellent.
Yes,
yeah.
At the end of the season, yeah.
Right, I didn't even know about this.
Well, it's very private.
Okay, thanks.
So, Dave, for the people that don't know who you are,
yes.
which is no one, I doubt, who are you? What did you do? What do you do now? And why are you here?
Who am I? First of all, Dave Carolan. Most Norwich City fans will know me because I spent 10 years at the club from the end of the 90s, that's the last millennium, through to 2008.
Didn't even get a celebration game at the end.
No, I didn't get a testimonial. The whole reason testimonials were banned for staff, I can't remember who it was, that organised, Tim Shepherd. Tim Shepherd got a 20-year testimonial, I think it was 20 years, and he got to play Celtic at home. Fantastic night, really, really good. And from that day on, this club swore never to give any member of staff a testimonial.
Did it get quite heavy?
Well, yeah, there's a lot of people who no, it wasn't that way. It was just like Tim sold out 24,000 people. And
Are you saying you couldn't have sold out 24,000 tickets?
Well, we were rebuilding the stadium at that stage.
Of course.
Okay.
So 10 years at the club.
Yep.
Head of sports science. Was that your title?
That was my title. Yeah.
Because I imagine 1998, just to make you feel slightly older, year after I was born. Sports science, is that a big thing in 1998? Because I can't imagine it is.
No, it wasn't a big thing. In fact, there were only probably 3 or 4 of us in the country doing it at that stage. Delia, to her credit, had the foresight to see that sport was changing. And colleagues of mine had written an article in one of the national newspapers talking about the advent of sports science across other sports, especially the Olympic sports. So Delia contacted Keith and Joe, and invited them to come up and talk to her about sports science. And off the back of that, she made a decision that she wanted to have a sports science input at the club. Now,
amazing.
At the time, Mike Walker, I think, was the then manager.
Yeah.
And I think the club had a fair few injuries that season, which had kind of prompted this discussion about maybe having to look at new ways of doing things. And to her credit, she said, okay, I'm going to back this. I think it's the right thing to do. And at the end of the season, the manager changed, and we were brought in. I was brought in full time to be the kind of hands on deck at the club. We had Joe Dunbar, who came in as an exercise physiologist. Joe had working with Lennox Lewis at the time.
Wow.
And worked with world champion triathletes. Was already working with other football teams on consultancy basis. We had Keith Power, who was an Olympic coach and psychologist, and we had Jane Griffin, who was the then British Olympic team nutritionist. So
And this is all at Norwich?
This was all at Norwich, yeah. So 1998, most people wouldn't have ever known that these people were in the background supporting and helping to create this sports science culture.
Yeah.
They would have seen me because I was doing warm-ups, but these are all great people, like real high caliber people. were there, not only helping me do my job, but helping the club hopefully at the advent of sports science create some real kind of strong culture around that.
And that's fascinating, isn't it, Chris? Because I think from the outside looking in, sometimes people see Norwich as a bit behind, stuck out on a limb, when in fact we were creating real change. I think if you look at it as a cultural thing, a lot of people say, well, Arsene Wenger came to the country and changed everything. Delia Smith was doing it.
Here we go. I love the fact that she was committing to innovative things back then. No offence, Dave. That's cool because she's doing it again now, big time. And I think it speaks huge volumes about Delia. Arguably, though, light and shade here, maybe that's got Delia in trouble sometimes, because I think that sometimes she might have potentially trusted people, not necessarily people within the staff structure, but particularly managers, where she's maybe believed, and maybe they've taken advantage of that. But obviously, great, cool, Big Dave was in the building for many years. I remember you as warm-up man.
Well,
really?
yeah, I've been called many things.
Medi man, warm-up man.
Water boy. I've had it all. You name it, I've had it, more and worse than unbroadcastable from the players.
Goodness gracious, really.
It was a great time, It was like a real time to change the culture of the sport. As you said, Arsene Wenger came in at the same time because the club at that stage appointed Bruce Rioch. So Bruce had come in from having just left Arsenal. Hugely credited with the fact he brought in Dennis Bergkamp, and the following year Arsene Wenger comes in, and his kind of great signings of French players, but also the fact that broccoli was introduced into the menu down at London Colney.
What's broccoli?
So suddenly it was get rid of tomato sauce and bring in broccoli,
So that's all you've done, basically.
I didn't do broccoli. No, we looked at some other kind of things that we tried to do. I mean, we've had some great innovations over the year. I remember Roger Munby, at the time when the club was a bit on its downers, really, because of the old ITV digital fiasco. You probably don't remember that, but
he's not allowed to comment.
Basically, ITV digital pulled all their money out of football, so the club was in a real kind of, we're going to lose £3 million or whatever it was of income. So Roger, being so innovative in trying to get out there and market different things, turned up with Californian raisins. So we were then having California raisins of all these different infused raisins in the dressing room before games.
Raisins, broccoli, anything else? Any other veg you want to chuck in the mix?
No, I can't think of any other vegetables we've tried, but Crofty probably remembers a few of them. He came up with some mad things over the years.
So let's go back to the start and so you come into the club. Where is the club at that stage in terms of what you're trying to do? Or is it non-existent? Is there, how much change has to be made to get it to a place where you look at it and go, yeah, that's where I want it to be?
Oh, massive, yeah. We need a massive change. Yeah. It's your old root and branch change of the culture and the preparation before training, how we trained.
And remind us, this is 98.
This is 1998.
So they're still smoking fags and drinking whiskey in the change room at this point?
No. They've stopped the smoking.
Okay,
The whiskey's still there.
That whiskey's still good. You're trying to take players who have prepared as English footballers for a generation and many generations in terms of how they would turn up for training. Some turning up 10 minutes before training would start, run in, get changed, run out on the pitch. After training, they wouldn't go into the gym, and the gym at Colney was, it was not much bigger than a box room.
Still the same.
Yeah.
Well,
so
in fact, I listened to your John Ruddy episode, and
John
was saying about the fact that Colney needed to be updated, and actually, going back to when we got promoted, that was my first thing down to the club was we need to upscale Colney, we need to improve the gym, it needs to be expanded, and really at that stage it was a hard sell, because the counter argument was you've just got promoted and become champions using exactly the same room. Why would you need to improve it? But of course, if you're bringing in like players of the caliber of Thomas Helveg from Milan,
the sales existed,
but fantastic player, technically unbelievable. I know he's over the years had a bit of a bad press, but fantastic player, in terms of the number of different positions he could play, and he was a really good character. And there's not many times you sign a 100 cap international captain from Milan when you're Norwich. But if you're bringing him to Colney at that stage and saying, look at our gym, whereas Milan have now got Milan Lab,
right,
the pinnacle of sports science, which they started 2 years after we started at Norwich.
Oh, wow.
But they're now like, it's gone to that level.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we're thinking, okay, when we're in 1998, the budget for the gym equipment was £500.
And that's like,
really?
That's like one bench press now, right?
So I managed.
Well, Christoph Zimmerman will be right, won't he?
Yeah, he'd be okay. But it was right. How do you equip a gym with £500 for an attack at the Championship or what it was, Division 1 then? So yeah, literally had to hustle, and we got out there and we found 3 full Olympic lifting kits for £150 each. Bought 3 of them, and we had £50 left over for the rest of the budget.
And this is a Championship club
operating
on a £500.
Well, that was that was for the gym equipment.
Yeah, of course.
We had obviously other stuff for.
But still, that seems peanuts for what you're trying to achieve, an elite sports team.
But at that stage, you remember Colney was considered a real breakthrough training ground.
Yeah.
There was only a few other clubs who had something comparable to Colney.
Yeah.
Bodymore Heath, which was kind of Aston Villa, was the one that everyone kind of looked at as kind of being your archetypal, but that was built in the 60s, 70s. And Colney was an upgrade certainly on that. But there were still plenty of clubs where they were turning up at the ground and then going to find parks and to train on. So Colney was still really, really good. The thing is, though, football doesn't stand still, and you always have to keep upgrading the equipment, the people, to try and get you to a place where you're competitive all the time.
So where does your vision come in here? Because obviously we've said there was only 3 or 4 people like yourself around at the time. You obviously think with your value you can take the club in a better direction. So where's your vision come if there's not other people doing it at the same time? Because you are creating change that others haven't even seen yet, and that's impressive.
Well, going back to how we ended up in here, we did have a visionary above us. Delia understood where this needed to go and was willing to support that. But it can't just be using a sledgehammer to crack a nut. Sometimes you have to be a little bit more intricate and allow change to happen. You have to encourage it to happen. So that meant a lot of time was spent on selling what we were doing to management and to players in terms of how we're going to train and how it's going to benefit them. So if I'm walking in the door and I'm saying to you and Roberts, who's I think at that stage never squatted or done deadlifts.
Did he have teeth? Did he have teeth at that point?
No, he still had his false teeth, which only came out on match day or training days. But yeah, you're starting to go into the lads and say, look, we need you to lift these weights, and it's like, we're not rugby players, we're not rowers.
Really?
Why are we going to lift weights? They're going to make us slow. So you're trying to sell the benefits of that, and that takes time.
Yeah, of course.
But it was easier, obviously, with the academy, because I used to do everything from the first team through to all the academy.
Yeah.
With the kids, you just started saying, this is how we're training.
Yeah.
And you can start straight away. They don't know any different, so they'll just take whatever they're being asked to do. With the first team, it was a little bit different.
Yeah, I mean, Chris, we've had Dean Ashton on this podcast before, and he spoke about when he came from, let me get this right, Crewe to Norwich.
Yeah.
And you were obviously there at that point in the club. Yeah. And I kind of get it though, Chris, because he'd only been used to something, and he'd been very successful, and then he goes up a notch, and it's suddenly all different. That must be tough for a player to suddenly change so quickly, mustn't it?
Yeah, it does. And I think that, that from Russ and Wes in the podcast with us recently, them saying that, even if you look at the Daniel Farker contrast from just the English prep to German prep, the contrast there too. So yeah, players struggle with it. But I think, survival of the fittest, literally, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, when Dino turned up, he arrived, we went to play Aston Villa. And
you were all taking the piss out of him, weren't you?
Well, no, I just said to him before the game, I said, Dino, how do you like to warm up? Because you're always trying to get that insight from players as to how they like to prepare. And he says, yeah, I like a hard warm-up, yeah. So
I like a hard warm-up.
Yeah.
Oh, come on,
yeah.
Dino.
No, he says, like, you know, and we'd done our research. I know the guy's a crew. I know what he had done.
Yeah.
So anyway, he says, I like a, get proper sweat on and warm up. Oh, okay, right. Well, you'll see what we do, and then we'll speak afterwards and see what you think.
Here we go.
And literally 5 minutes in, he's blowing. Like the lads are looking at him like, this guy can't be fit to play, you know. But you know, he got a sweat on, but he got more on than he probably thought. You know.
Yeah.
Now, whether that sweat was responsible for the ball glancing in off his bonds for the first goal for Villa, I don't know. But you know. And that's a lot of what we do. When players come into us nowadays, you know, we do a lot of research into what they've done before, because you got to be careful with them. You can't just suddenly chuck them in and hope for the best. You got to ease some in. You got to ease some back.
Can we go to nowadays, or are we're still going through the Dave timeline?
Yeah, I was just curious in terms of
It's a long timeline.
Dean is
It's
obviously
a cool timeline.
was a fantastic player, but he's not going to be the only one who maybe didn't fancy the training side of things when he came to the club. How do you go about finding what suits a player? Because you hear about some players who might only train a couple of times a week due to injuries. It must be very specific. So how do you go about finding what works for a squad of 25 different players? Because that can't be easy.
Yeah, I mean, you hear a lot about medicals nowadays, you know, and there's this kind of mystique about it. You know, what happens at a medical. A lot of the time that we spend doing is research into history, you know. How often do they play? How often do they last in games? Do they continually have to be subbed off? What's their injury history like? You know, are we seeing a lot of repeat similar type of injuries? You know, are they soft tissue, or are they, you know, ligamentous or joint injuries? You know, so we do a lot of work on really understanding what the player is when they come in. Then we explain our philosophy of how we train to them, and then see how that matches up to what they've been exposed to. Nowadays, it's quite simple because there's a lot of data sharing. We're able to get information. But back in the day, you're probably spending time just sitting down with them saying, look, what have you done? How have you done it? What do you like to do? Is there anything you really dislike doing? And then you try and match that.
And at that point, have you ever had to turn anyone away from Norwich City? Is there anyone that you'd gone, you're just not the right fit?
Not the right fit, but when they're in the building.
Yeah. Have they failed medicals before?
There's different reasons people can fail medicals.
Yeah.
You know, there can be a lot of things. You know, and in the past, there's certainly been medicals that have been used as
It must be so awkward for
declarations of why a player's transfer hasn't gone through because
okay.
they failed the medical. But actually, it could be buried somewhere in, you know, other reasons. But it's a big statement when somebody comes out to fail a medical, because it tells the rest of the football world and everybody that there's a physical issue here that you might have to deal with, you know. But that's not to say that some clubs have a very, very rigorous medical, and other clubs can be a bit more relaxed about it, you know. And often it might come down to, do you need this player? Are you willing to take the risk?
So when you see a player like a Matt Jarvis, who all Norwich fans feel sorry for in his, you know, career since he signed for Norwich, in terms of just consistent long-term injuries, would that have come up when we went to sign him? Would that have been, as you say there, a risky signing? Would we have known about these injuries that kept cropping up before we went out and spent the money?
You'd like to think you'd know about what injuries they've had. Yeah, certainly there are systems out there to show you. The internet's great now, because, you know, actually the internet didn't exist, I don't think. Oh, he's just started. yeah. I remember in my house in Heatherset trying to download a file which was 3 megabytes, and it took 5 hours. And I'm not sure if that was Heatherset or whatever. But no, so there's a lot of data sharing now, so we can certainly go out and look at the player's history. You also have to potentially look at where they're coming from,
right,
and maybe make a professional judgment as to how was their care, where they were, and think, have you got a system that can support the player better? So, you know, going to what we do now, we know that over the last 4 or 5 years that I've been working with the manager I'm with now, or have been with,
which is
with Gary Rabbit, we've had 4 or 5 less than grade 2 hamstrings in 4 years.
Wow.
So how we train, how we prepare, we know pretty much protects our players against a lot of soft tissue injuries. And that's a nice way of looking back at your body of work and going, we think we can keep players on the fit. Now, that's not to say that some players aren't just predisposed to certain types of injuries. Now, managing those, who knows? You know, injuries present themselves in lots of different ways. Nowadays, we do everything from assessing saliva to looking at you know, because we want to look at stress levels, you know, so you can see now as players approach transfer deadline day, you can see their stress levels going up because there's potentially a move, or they might be getting sold and now they're under pressure at home, or they're under pressure from
so you can tell if they've had a bad night with the missus.
Well, not to that level. No, I can't tell you. Know, she might have been stressing him, but I don't know how.
Okay. So that's really interesting, because we hear nowadays a lot about mental health, and rightly so.
Yeah.
So is it almost now a sense of assessing physical health and also mental? Has that changed over the 20 odd years you've been in the game?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly, you know, you see it locally with Norwich. You've seen a lot of players who have had mental health issues.
Yeah.
Not a lot of players, but you've had players who have had mental health issues, and sometimes you don't know about those. Right. You know, they can be things that were, you know, it's a very much a bravado game, you know, and you know, a lot of alpha males and a lot of testosterone, and that kind of thing was being hidden. And even though these lads would turn up every day for training and be a really competitive beast, they'd get in their car and drive away from the training ground and like be having a really just bad
completely
time.
yeah,
you know. So and you know, there was a great interview I heard last week with David Bentley, and he was talking about his stresses and how he feels so much better being out of football now. You know, but David, when he came here, was like a real bravado guy. Young,
I remember that.
Young
highlights.
Yeah, scored great goals. You know, the one in Newcastle was a fantastic one away. And you know, he used to tell us, you know, he'd be living out in the country and he'd be going up to the edge of his garden and talking to the cows in the evening. You know, so you know, just because he was a London boy, he was out in the country, and he was like, what do I do?
Well, you hear with
talking to the cows,
but also you hear with Danny Rose as well, who of course has come out saying, you know what, I can't wait to finish football because of the racist abuse. So there's probably a lot of players that are like, this is just really hardcore, and the money doesn't come into it, does it? Because it's your health and your wellness that comes before that. So massive part of it.
But going back to the point you were making, do we screen for it as much as we can?
Yeah.
You know, so
I suppose there's only so much you can do, though, isn't there?
Yeah, I mean, at Stoke we had a psychologist, and the psychologist was you know, in charge of spending time with the players.
Yeah.
Sometimes before the signs, sometimes obviously when they're in the building, to try and hopefully flag potential issues that we could then address. You know, so how you might speak to players, when's the right time to speak to them, should you bring something up or should you avoid it? You know, it's not that you're going to necessarily tiptoe around things, but it's certainly huge in a manager's armory to know, look, this guy's having stresses at home.
Yeah,
you know?
Definitely. So there's a ton of pressure on you, Dave, actually. And going back 2 steps to my comments about the medical and getting that over the line, so to speak, in that Sky Sports language, did you feel pressure from managers that the medical was kind of like we just need to get it done sort of thing? Or were you like, actually, hang on a minute, mate, this is really serious? How did you go about that when the pressure was on to potentially get a deal over the line or something like that?
Well, I mean, fortunately for me, you know, most of the medical happens with the medical staff. So whether that was Tim Shepherd or Neil Reynolds and the doctors that were associated with them. So, you know, in terms of musculoskeletal assessment, that was their bag. We were doing other research into their, you know, game outputs. We could use Prozone or, you know, try and get GPS data or whatever that might be. Or we talk to our oppos at other clubs and just try and get as much information as you can, because not every club is going to tell you, oh yeah, the guy's a crock, you know, because
they're trying to sell you on there, really. They're pitching to you,
know. But you've also got the, you know, it's a bit like when you have to give a reference for somebody who's, you know, leaving your organisation, somebody phones you up, you know.
You have to decline it.
Well, you can give as much of the truth as you decide that you want to.
Okay, right.
You know, so you don't have to have full disclosure, but you can give enough information.
Okay.
You know, so it's not the easiest thing to do. You know, to get to the point where medical is like black and white in terms of sign, don't sign. Medicals will always have, as you said earlier, risk associated with it. So you might red flag certain things. You know, if it's a major knee problem, yeah, that could be blowing up every 3-6 months. Then yeah, that's a big risk. You know, and I've had it in the past where, you know, you get very, very short amount of time. Actually, I had to do a physical with somebody, and it was pretty much you've got 20 minutes, make a decision.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know,
Wow.
on the back of this is
Yeah.
whether we sign the guy or not. But just to let you know, there's going to be X amount of money involved in this signing.
So go on then. So you're in the Norwich City room now, and I'm going to try and squeeze something out of you. I'm going to put some pressure on you now, Dave.
Okay.
Can you reveal a player that almost signed, that didn't, or did it never happen?
Oh, yeah, one who I've worked with since, you know. So Dougie Livermore, I remember him coming up to me on the training ground and said, look, we're signing this great young talent. He's coming in. We've got a little bit of work to do with him. You know, he's a fantastic passer of the ball. You know, he's destined for the very, very top, but we need to work on his mobility.
Okay.
Now he's still gone on and he's played probably Champions League. He's been a full England international. He's still playing now.
Dave, come on.
So Tom Huddleston was one of the players.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So.
And what season was that? Come on, squeeze it out.
Oh, go.
Come on.
Trying to think.
TNC exclusive.
I don't know. 2.
What manager?
I think that was under Nigel. That one.
Yeah.
Wow, interesting.
But yeah, that was one where it was going to be Tom's come in and we're going to work with him, you know, to improve his mobility. And then I don't know what happened, but he ended up going somewhere else.
Interesting. Cool.
Tom Huddleston could have been ours. Is there a risk? When we spoke to Jake on the podcast about a month ago, I think a word that kept cropping up in that, and the reason he thought we were maybe doing so well this season is we've got a lot of youngsters who are maybe slightly naive in this situation. They haven't been here before. They're fearless. Is there a risk in the modern game of over-analysing things and there's stats for everything? Is there sometimes a value in just being slightly naive to it all and just going out there and doing you?
Oh, 100%. There is death by data. You know, you can literally read anything. You know, you can see stats. I was at the game on Saturday and I could see all of the passing stats for QPR and Norwich at half-time, sat in my seat. So I can see who was passing, where they were passing, what direction, you know, the balance of play. So you could see why teams make tactical decisions, you know. The problem now for a manager is if the fans have got that sat in the stands, you can't really come out after the game and tell a completely different story
Interesting.
to what, you know, a fan can see all the statistics. So yeah, it is difficult now with the amount of information. I think you have to work from culture first, you know, what your philosophy is of how you want to play and how that culture sits around your team and around your management. That allows you then to have the platform to then progress. So people who don't fit that culture need to remove. People who come in need to fit in. So that's the first thing, I think. And then after that, you can start to see, well, okay, how do we build towards how we want to play? You're not going to do it in 3 months or 6 months sometimes. It sometimes takes a lot of time. If you look at the team when we got promoted in 2004, was vastly the same team from 3 years earlier.
Yeah.
You know, the team that got to the playoff final and the team that got promoted, there's probably 85% of the same team and practically the same squad stayed together for a long time. So they knew each other's thinking, they knew each other's behaviours before they did anything. Nowadays we want success fast.
Yeah.
And because data's fast and information's fast and everyone can make a very quick assumption, right, we know you had 75% possession, but what did you do with it?
Yeah.
You know, back in the day it was like, okay, we had a lot of the ball, but you know, we didn't do enough.
Yeah.
Because you often see, Dave, particularly from an away team visiting Carrow Road, you have a guy with a laptop that sprints in front of the Barclay before the half-time whistle goes. So he's clearly in there presenting the data to the gaffer to then provide the correct team talk? Is that how it works?
Oh yeah. I mean, some managers will look for certain, KPIs, key performance indicators that they want to look at. So often there'll be a communication from the bench to the analysts in terms of clipping certain things that they want to look at again. So that might be in set plays, or it might be in transitions, or whatever that might be. So those 5 or 6 clips will then be brought in to have a look at again, both offensively and defensively. But again, going back in 2000, we had the first ever live into half-time at Carrow Road. So we were actually taking the video and sending it straight into half-time onto a television.
Right.
So yeah, again, going back to innovation, we were driving live half-time statistics into the dressing room.
Awesome.
So, but yeah, those kind of inputs can make a big difference. Again, going back to the weekend's game against QPR, you could see that they shifted their formation at half-time. They knew they had to stop Norwich. It's something like we did it when we came to Carrow Road early in the year with Stoke, which was, these guys are so good in possession. At some stage, you just got to say, right, have the ball and we'll defend for our lives. And certainly the second half, I thought QPR, held Norwich a little bit more at arm's length. You could argue Norwich were 3-0 up at the same time, Maybe there was damage limitation going on.
Yeah, we'll get onto the weekend's game in a bit, but you mentioned their culture, and that's certainly I think a buzzword that's been used a lot, especially since Stuart Webber's arrived at the club, and we all know the fantastic work that he's done. In terms of your role, culture is obviously very important in terms of what you're trying to do, but how much influence do you actually have on it? Because if the people above you aren't seeing the same vision as you are, then it's going to be tough, isn't it? So you're almost having to feed a culture from where you are upwards, and hopefully it comes back down as well. So it can't be easy.
Well, coming in as a management group, we know how we like to run our culture, and not everyone's the same. It's not identical cultures that everyone brings in. Some people are very much disciplinarian. Some managers run a real tight ship. Others are a little bit looser. Some players, get away with certain things. Others absolutely clamp down on those. So you've got a decision to make as to where you want to lie on that kind of spectrum of, real disciplinarian, or very, very loose.
Right.
Now, most people will probably not go for the real hard or the real soft. Our job is really to manage that's being continually worked at.
Okay.
So when players are turning up 1 minute late for a gym session, we nail that. We're not going to allow people to be just wandering in when they want. It's a training session. It's just as important. Some players may disagree with this, but it's just as important as the football stuff
I love
that
it.
they do.
Well, being punctual is important in life, let alone being a footballer, Dave. Come on.
Well, yeah, you'd like to think so, but when it's
worst trainers then. Come on.
Worst trainers.
Give me a few worst trainers at Norwich. Come on.
At Norwich.
Was there a few that you had to give a bollocking to?
Oh, yeah, we've had players. The best examples I can probably give you are when people turn back for pre-season. And I've moved away over the years from the old soundbite of, the lads have turned up, they're all in great nick, they did their programs, and I'm like, most guys, and I was this guy years ago, patting myself on the back for I did a great program, lads are really fit, gaffer, come on, let's give a new contract. But I've seen players come back in terrible shape.
Come on.
Well, no, I don't think it'd be fair to.
Best then. Who was in the best shape at Norwich?
Best shape. I mean,
the
best year probably was when Andrew Hughes came to the club.
Interesting.
Because Andrew was super fit, but we already had a super fit athlete in the building. So competitive animals, both wanted to be alpha dogs. So Hux and Hughesy went at it to be who would be the best on the lactate test.
Yeah.
So the infamous lactate test. Now it's a hard run anyway, but these two cranked it up. So by the end of it,
they were ruined for the game.
No, I mean they ruined other people on a Saturday because they were just so fit.
Yeah.
So Darren ended up getting to, I think it was 22.4 kilometers per hour, having done about 7 stages of 3 minutes before that. He got about halfway through that, and to be fair to Andy, he went at it, but got about 30 seconds in. But that's phenomenal level running.
I remember Andy Hughes having the worst chant of all time, and I'm sure people will remember this in the comment. It was literally just Hughes, and that was it. I just remember him having a shocking chant. But
Well, it is a chant.
lo and behold,
There
he
are
was an
players.
awesome trainer.
There are players. I didn't say he was an awesome trainer. I said he was very, very fit.
Okay.
You know. So.
Okay.
Yeah, but yeah, Hughesy had a chant. There's plenty of people who didn't
Yeah.
have a chant. Some of us had a chant.
So go on then, word on Hucks.
Hucks.
Give us a word on Hucks.
Because he knows he's fit, and when we've had him on here a few times, and he's still doing like 10k runs every day. Still, what did he say? He never used to eat breakfast or something.
No.
Just ate pasta for
Yeah.
lunch, and that was it.
Yeah, I mean, we had some bizarre things going on. I mean, Ewan ended up just having like milky coffee in the morning because he was trying to like drop some body fat, you know, because we had a bit of work to do at the start. And to be fair, he nailed it. You know, he got. In fact, he got to a point where we had to tell him to start putting weight back on.
Oh, wow.
Because he committed to it, you know, and suddenly he saw the benefits of it, and he felt he was getting better and fitter. But again, it's always players are getting older, they're playing more and more games, so you're trying to manage this ideal of some kind of aesthetic look with performance. And some people sit at a slightly higher body fat. So we kind of talk about optimal weight, you know, similar to a boxer. You know, if they're too light, they've got no power. Too heavy, they're too sluggish. So we're always trying to find that balance. Go back to what's individual for one is not the same for another.
I suppose there's no better example in recent years than Grant Holt at Norwich. A lot of opposition fans, you know, sung what they did, and he embraced that. But he was well, I don't know if he was, but looked fairly fit and athletic on the pitch, and it worked for him.
Well, he scored a lot of goals,
He did.
you know. So fundamentally, what's his job? Score
Indeed.
goals, and he scored goals.
Yeah, I'd be interested to get your thoughts going away from Norwich slightly. Marcelo Bielsa this season.
Yeah, I
at
was going to
Leeds,
bring that up. Yeah.
Spygate, all of that. You know, you've been behind the scenes for donkeys of years. This isn't new, right? This has been happening before, or
What,
is this
spying or
not? Yeah, all right, spying.
Oh, I was going down the data avenue because he's just so thorough with his data.
There's
isn't
two
he?
things here, isn't there? You've got the spying, which I guess plays into just getting more and more data, and how thorough he is. Where does he sit on the spectrum in terms of the preparation?
I mean, yeah, everybody came out the following week and said that's nothing new, and certainly doing research on teams before you play them is nothing new. Now, the lengths that he said doing 50 matches of, like, he watched 50 matches of our Derby County season. Now, there's an argument to say, well, it's a completely different manager, plays a different way with different players. What's the relevance, you know? But if he's looking for individual detail on the behaviours of certain players, yeah, fair play.
Yeah.
If you've got the manpower to go through 50 games and produce that level of data, not only just for one game, but you got to do it for the other 45 games of the season. I mean, fair play.
Do you think that's overkill?
Well, you know, he's got a team that were 14th in the season, 14th in the league last year
Turn
to
it around.
top
Yep.
two. You know, so do you say
Top
that's
three.
Oh yeah, sorry. We are live. Yeah, so they're a top three team and have been top two most of the season. Thanks. But you could easily say, how are Norwich doing their stuff? They're getting equally as good results. Similarly, they were both, I think, beside each other in the league at the end of last year, 13th or 14th or whatever they were. And, you know, they both turned it round. So what it does show you that is, from one year to the next, there's no guarantee in the championship that last year is going to be a guide to next year. You know, and I've said it many times that you come to Carrow Road and you see a team that over 70 games develop their art. And there was certainly frustration. You know, I come back in and I speak to my friends. You know, we go down to the pub on a Saturday night. I talk about our games, they tell me about Norwich's games, and you'd hear the frustration of we've loads of the ball but we don't score.
Yeah.
Whereas this year it's like we have loads of the ball and we score loads.
Yeah.
But that's been drip fed for a long time. And you know, I went to the East Anglian derby at Ipswich this year.
Yeah.
And I came away from that game going, we need to play either of these teams soon.
Right.
Because they were both.
And this is when he's still at Stoke.
Yeah, still at Stoke. Because I came away from it thinking, well, you know, neither of them look like they really have honed what they're going to be this season.
Agreed.
It was a patchy game. Probably in the end, Norwich were happier coming out of it.
Yeah.
You know, and but I also reflect on that game because I think that was one of the turning points of the season for Norwich, and not because of anything they necessarily how they played on the day, but the fact that I think it was Louis Thompson injured his hamstring, refused to come off,
Yeah.
stayed on the pitch.
What a boy.
And actually the now memory might be failing me here because I'm a lot older than you lads, but if I remember, a lot of the chat afterwards was the fact that Louis Thompson had stayed on, and it showed the culture of the team. The team didn't want to let the fans down.
Yes.
He didn't want to let the team down. And it was almost like you felt afterwards like, this all came together.
Yeah.
Suddenly it was like, all right,
I'm
we're
buying
all
that.
willing to
I like that.
fight for each other to not lose a game. And the fans thought, this is amazing. These guys will stay on the pitch injured to not lose a game. And for me, that was a real important point of the season where, because after that, they went on a run of 5 games, wins.
Yeah.
Then they lost. Don't know who to. And then they won 6 games. And if you look,
hang on, what's that all about, by the way?
What's
How
that?
could you do that to us?
I've got a good history account. I've been back a few times.
You knew everything, didn't you? You fed it all.
And they still needed one of our players to score for them as well.
You know, if you want to help us out, we're willing to take it. You know, I came back with Colchester and the goalkeeper helped us out that first day.
Yeah, we won't talk about that.
Sorry to bring it back up. But you know, that
Actually, you're a real... I'm not happy with you, Dave,
Why is that?
actually. Why are you even here? You've hurt me.
I
occasions.
think when we went to the start, he called me a maverick.
He did.
yeah. But you know,
Love
I've had great times coming back to Carrow Road, as well as when I was here. You know, so it's always been a good place. And I said it when I left, and I think some people might have thought it was sycophancy when I said. That's my big word of the day, by the way.
Okay.
You know, if anyone can get that on a board, great.
Okay.
Yeah, it was. You know, this is home for us. Norwich is home for us, or Norfolk is home for us. We've never moved away after being away for 10 years. So, you know, coming back it's always the first fixture I would look to. So hopefully I'm getting to look for one next year.
You were at the club for 10 years then. So we've talked about when you walked in the door. How chuffed were you leaving with the legacy you left? Because you changed a lot at the club. Were you happy with what you'd done in that time?
Yeah, without a doubt. You know, we had some good times. You know, we got to the playoff final.
Very good, yeah.
We won the league.
Yeah, not
You
too
know,
bad.
That's not too shabby.
Yeah,
you know,
that's
so
all right.
I think most people would have that. Actually lasting for 10 years.
Yeah.
You know, some people would say I saw a lot of managers off, and I certainly saw a lot of players off the premises. I lasted Flem and that. You know, he was the only player who was there at the start. He was the last player who left, you know, and you know, again, then I teamed up with him the following year or 2 years at Lowestoft. But yeah, I think when you come to a place, if you leave it, you like to think that you've left in a better place, and I think it was in a better place. Certainly, you always look for the results, and you hope that people carry that on. Now they're going to do it in different ways, and I'm sure by now, you know, it was always interesting coming back. You know, you still see stewards and you still see fans who remember when you were here, and then you see players who you worked with. You know, very young players. You know, I remember Gunny putting his gloves on. You know, Angus for the first time.
Yeah.
I've got on a video somewhere at home, so I'm gonna have to dig
get
that
that.
out.
Yeah.
That's gold.
Yeah, if I can find that, you know, I think Brian will probably want that first. But yeah, so you see people like him, Chris Martin, Jason Shackle.
Yeah.
You know. We used to fitness test all the players. So we were the Murphy brothers when they were like this high, you know, Tom Adeyemi, all those, you know, it was great times, you know, to work with a lot of great players, you know, be part of their tiny part of their future.
So this is all very rosy, Dave.
Yeah.
Glenn Roeder rocks up.
Yep.
And it all changes.
It did indeed.
So, thoughts and feelings on Mr. Roeder?
I mean, it's a manager's prerogative to change what he needs to at a club. You know, if he deems that, you know, there needs to be changes, whether they're on the pitch, you know, we're no different to players. You know, if the players aren't in the manager's future, and the staff can equally not be in the manager's future. You know, what you hope is that whether you're working with someone and they like you or not, that they respect the work you do and the people that you are. And I think that's something I've always tried to do with players, and you hope that you get that returned to you. Not every manager treats people well. Other managers treat them very, very well. Some have got agendas, some don't. So yeah, it was short shrift certainly at the end of that season, because there were a lot of us in the staff who went through the exit door that summer.
Okay.
And it's always disappointing when it's done in a really quiet way in the dead of the closed season, so you don't get to say goodbye to other staff, or you don't get to say goodbye to players. Not that players necessarily or other staff are particularly bothered about that, but it's a form of closure that you want when you leave a club, is to say thank you and goodbye to people.
When you've been there for that long as well.
Yeah, certainly. It was 10 good years.
Yeah.
I think a lot of us had got the impression that there were going to be changes, so we'd have to be. We'd have to have been pretty blind to not see.
It must have been incredibly hard though, even knowing that it was coming. Must have been so difficult. 10 years, settled down, all of the players you'd seen through, and for someone to just rock up and say, "You're not some of me, sorry."
Yeah, I think you've obviously had Darren on, and myself, Darren, Dion, we were all there at Sheffield Wednesday at Hillsborough in the last day of the season. The famous one, like Dion was supposed to stay on for a certain amount of time. That wasn't honoured. Hawks never really got to, he didn't know he was staying or going. And then when we got off the pitch at the end of the game, I always wait for the last players to come off to make sure they're all safe most of the time. And when we got to the dressing room, we weren't allowed into the dressing room. So it was only Glenn's staff who were allowed into the dressing room. So we had to wait outside, and that was pretty much, we could look around as a set of staff, and kind of at that point we kind of knew, right, this has all changed.
That seems mad though, that you're all Norwich, you're a squad.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's Glenn's staff who's allowed in. Surely you're Glenn's staff. You're working for the same common goal here. It's not. It shouldn't be one fraction and another fraction. That just seems wrong.
Well, at that stage, the season was done. So
Right.
I think that the line of the sand was drawn on 90 minutes. So from now, we're moving forward to next season. And from this point, even though we didn't know it officially, we probably knew
Did
deep
the
down.
players get a sniff of that though, Dave? Did that affect, in your opinion, the players' performance then going into the following season? They must have been like, hang on a minute, we're losing Dave, we're losing all of the staff. I mean, that must have created some real uncertainty for the club.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was in that summer, myself and Neil Reynolds were in with Adam Drury.
Mm-hmm.
He was rehabbing his knee, and I think we were right at the end of May. So we were still working with Adam, getting him to a point where he could go off and have his holiday. So we were still in. We were still working with this player who was, a top player for the club, and had been club captain. And then suddenly, one kind of Friday, it was into the office and out the door. So it is as brutal as that. I think sometimes, in our situation, as staff, we're almost collateral damage that really the fans don't really know too much about us, what we do. They just think we're other staff sometimes. And when they're calling for a manager's head, they sometimes don't realise that if he goes, there's also going to be 5, 6, 7 other members of staff who are potentially going to lose their jobs. So yes, you may not be happy with the manager, and I'm not pleading that you can't be upset with a manager, but certainly there are collateral damage to any change.
So to speak about that point then, Dave, I remember very well the massive Worthy out moment. What was that like, being in the camp at that point?
Yeah,
listening to those chants, and that must have been really difficult, considering you'd won the league with Worthy.
Yeah, it was a different time though, wasn't it? Like nowadays, you're going back to the immediacy thing. If you can start a movement in a few days on Twitter, and that can build momentum really, really quick. A hashtag here, and you built it. With Nigel, we got relegated from the Premier League. We then had a whole other season where we were expected to bounce back, like every team was expected to bounce back. And I think, if you take the last 5 years, only one team in the last 15 has gone back up from coming down.
Yeah.
So it wasn't really different back then, apart from West Brom were doing it. But we ended up, starting the next year really, No, we started the next year well, and I think it was the end of August. I think we were in top 6, and September was car crash, and I distinctly remember we were.
It's Burnley at home, isn't it?
Burnley at home was the last game, yeah. So and the Doc famously got sent off, for trying to rugby tackle. I can't remember who was up front.
What a boy though.
Yeah.
Gary Doherty, what a boy.
Yeah, fast.
Top boy.
Top boy.
Top boy.
You've
what a man. He should have been playing up front for Norwich, surely.
The Ginger Pele, yeah, he could play either way, but he actually wanted to nail down a position and was asked which one he wanted.
And he picked defence.
He picked defence, yeah.
Dog.
There you go.
Anyway, so it was difficult at that moment.
Oh yeah, those are tough times because I'd worked with Nigel for 6 years, and you're seeing a man who's been, relentlessly abused from the stands, So you go to Saturday and you see a manager being loaded from the stands, and obviously, and Nigel was that same manager when we got promoted.
Yeah.
But there wasn't a social media campaign to be able to back him. There wasn't you guys who are in having kind of chats with people who are telling you about the insides of the game. All the fans knew were two things. They saw the interviews on the telly, and they always criticised Anglia or BBC because they were biased towards whoever, or you were getting the local papers. Yeah. Because the clubs didn't have a real TV broadcast, so you got highlights, you might have got an interview, that was it. And
so it must have been really nice for you recently to have seen Worthy welcomed back into Colney to present the lads with a shirt. I forgot who it was actually. Who was it that was doing the shirt?
I
think it might be Teta, yeah. That must have been nice.
Oh,
it's good to see the work that Stuart's doing now, bringing the old band back together, so to speak.
Yeah, there's certainly been times at Norwich, in recent years, I've spoken to colleagues and friends and ex-players who, they couldn't really go in, and now they bring them all back in, and it's great to see. I've spoken to Nigel countless times over the years. He's a top man, and was always great fun. Certainly, you go back to culture.
He was a real nice guy. I remember meeting him as a kid, and he had all the time of the day for all of the fans. Definitely.
Yeah, and before there was Wales with Stronger Together and everybody else with Something Together. Back then the phrase was togetherness. We coined that phrase back then. While Ian Dowie was coining bounce back ability, we were coining togetherness, and it was fantastic times. We had a real fun time at the training ground. The lads. We could have a real laugh in training. Steve Foley used to say, you can have a real laugh in training, but don't make training a laugh. So we knew what the level was, where we could have fun. But it was this idea of serious fun. But when it came to Saturday, 3:00, that team would go to war with
There's
anyone.
something I have to mind there, Dave. You've come out with a real gem there, which has been a bugbear of mine for a while, and I think a lot of people would probably know that by now as well. Legends at a football club. Legends coming back, not allowed. Gunny taking the job, the way that Gunny was treated. But that was the fire starter for me. But another one, Ewan Roberts not being allowed back in the mix. These people are legends of the football club. You see Paul Lambert, what he's done at Ipswich. One of the first thing he did was he brought back legends. Just what is it like for you seeing that, knowing just if Ewan Roberts, for example, how much of a top man he is, and for someone like him to not be involved in the club, what is that all about? Because surely it can only bring positivity and credibility to the club as well. Bloody hell, Ewan Roberts is in the door. Surely that lifts you, right?
You'd like to think so. It's not to know what all the relationships are that we're not aware of. So there might have been a crossword in the past between two people, and that's it. There's almost a blanket ban. Legends in football clubs. I mean, you can have a good half a season now, and suddenly we get the word legend starts to get banded around. And I saw some recently, comparing some real established players with some young guys who are doing really well, and both the word legend being used at the same time. And I think that's always dangerous, because not only does it potentially diminish somebody who is a real legend, but it also upskills somebody or upstates somebody who maybe has had a good time. You know, you can have a one season wonder who can do amazing things, and then you find that they fall off the edge of a cliff.
Let's jump to the modern day then, with Norwich.
Yeah.
With all the work that Stuart's done, and I've said he's a genius on multiple times, but it doesn't feel like what we're doing now is much different to the work that you were doing. Maybe it's just come to the surface a little bit more. Now it's a little bit more fashionable. What have you made of the work that Stuart's done and Daniel has done and the sports science guys have done and the recruitment team have done, compared to what was going on a couple of seasons ago, and then to compare it to what the work that you were doing with Worthy in the fantastic times
Good luck with that question.
that we had?
It's broad.
Yeah, broad. What do you make of what Stuart has done, and is it much different to what you were doing under Worthy and others?
Oh yeah, I mean his role is different to mine.
No, I know.
In terms of what Stuart's done is he's come in, he's certainly shaken the tree.
Yeah.
You know, he's made a lot of changes behind the scenes in terms of staff. You know, there's lots of heads of department, heads rolled, early doors in his kind of time at the club. And you know, they're brave decisions to make. You know, especially going back, you know, to the point I made about Glenn. If someone comes in and they feel they need to change things, and they've got the prerogative to do that, they have to be supported. You know, because sometimes, you know, you got to break eggs. You know, if you want that nice omelette, and he certainly, you know, go back to or risotto. I don't know. Do you put eggs in the risotto? But anyway, the point stands, which is, you know, he's come in. He made some big calls early, recruitment wise. I mean, nobody saw Daniel Farke come in from Borussia Dortmund to take over Norwich. You know, that was a massive call, and then to surround him with his whole staff. Now, fair play to the lads, because which is almost a Farkism, isn't it? Fair play to the lads.
Yeah. Very content with that.
It was a real kind of determining period where they allowed all of the staff to come in, and what they did is they assimilated into the culture here, but they then made everyone here assimilate to their culture of how they do things.
Yes.
So that was really, really well done. But they were always surrounded by somebody who had been experienced, from being at Liverpool, from being at Huddersfield, from being also at some other clubs lower down. So it experienced the spectrum of clubs. So certainly what Stuart's done has been outstanding. Recruitment wise, I mean, there's been some really, really clever buys.
Who's your favourite?
My favourite, I always have liked seeing young players come through from the club's academy where they can be fitted in. You know, because if you look at someone like Max Aarons,
yes. I was hoping you were going to say Max.
Why your favourite is?
Player of the season for me.
Well, you know what? Watching him up close yesterday, you just see a guy who's just unruffled by the whole game. He's got. I don't know him. I've never met him, but he seems to have no pretense about him being a really, really top player, even though he's performing like a really, really top player. You know, Hernandez, I spoke to people out in Germany who were like really surprised that they had signed Hernandez, because he had seemingly one good season at whichever club he had, and they said really surprised that Hernandez has gone there. And then you see him this year and you're saying, right, okay, you're now starting to see the player coming through. But, you know, they've taken time to get there. You know, Marco Stiebermann maybe last year as a left back, you know, when we came to play, was like, you know, this as a left back, you know, he wasn't particularly mobile in a defensive way. But now you see him playing in that advanced midfield role and you think, wow, this guy can manipulate a ball and he can see a pass. You know, like the ball, he's trying little chip balls or through balls, and you think, that wasn't the left back we saw last year, you know. So certainly people have been given time. I remarked to Michael Bailey at the start of the season that what was interesting, I think it was stand corrected, so don't come at me on Twitter if this is wrong.
Oh, we will, believe me.
Right, great. The first team that Norwich picked this season, it may have only had one player who had started the championship game the year before.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you.
Suddenly you had gone from like having Tim Closer, who a year before was the only player who had played in the championship. Come a year later, he's the only player who's ever played in the championship 12 months.
Yeah, for Norwich, yeah.
So, a major transition to take that amount of players, give them a whole season, and some of them not. Max hadn't played until this year.
Well, Max made his
Chucked in
debut at
Ipswich.
the
Your
game
game.
you're talking about.
Well, and I was sat beside Ricky Martin at that game, and he was saying, like, this kid is the real deal.
Yeah.
Wow. So fair play to Rick for
That's class.
for seeing that talent, and and being a big part of nurturing that talent. And certainly not everything. There's never a point in time where you can say that's where it all changed. So fair play to Stuart, because he's certainly taken the baton and run on.
Yeah.
But there's somebody handed him that baton, somebody, or left it there for him, that he then has taken it on. It's the race never stops in football. You just give it the next baton, and you do your leg, and you do the best job that you can.
And in terms of Daniel's training regimes and how he's gone about things, I think Cameron Jerome was the first player that came out and said, I just didn't get on with the training regimes. It wasn't for me. I didn't understand why we were doing 2-3 sessions a day. Mm-hmm. And now you look at it, and the Nationals are going, Norwich have scored so many late goals because we're so intensely fit and we're so, trained to really well. How tough would that have been for Daniel coming into a changing room that just simply wasn't used to it? You've probably been through it before.
Yeah.
And then bringing players in like a Stiepermann who are used to that. And how different are the training regimes from Germany compared to here? Because it's a different culture, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, what's happened in this country over the last, 20 years, there was certainly an attraction to Spanish-style football.
Yes.
Everyone liked the kind of tiki-taka, we're going to play possession-based football. Germany, when they got knocked out of the World Cup in the late 90s, early 2000s, totally restarted the whole youth system and rebuilt it, and they decided how they were going to play. But physical side of the game is massive in Germany.
Yeah.
They still have great store in running and doing lots of running, and that it doesn't have to be tied up with a game or a small-sided game. It doesn't have to be hidden inside football.
Yeah.
It can be, or it doesn't have to be. So what they have always done is do a lot of physical preparation. Now, you hear this 2 or 3 sessions a day. You can do 2 or 3 sessions in the morning.
Right.
And they could be 2 or 3 sessions in a day, because you could have a pre-training activation session, you could have a training session, you could have a gym session, and that could be 3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Or you could do a training session, some weights, and then go out and do some strides in the afternoon. That could be 3. It doesn't have to be this idea of players getting beasted 3 times a day.
Right.
I was recently talking to the guys at Leeds United about what they did this season, and you find out that how Bielsa's training, it isn't all this super hard run them till they drop. The players come in at 6 a.m. and leave at 7 p.m.
Which is what we're told he does.
Well, I don't think anyone said that's what he does, but this idea of 3 sessions a day comes out. So everyone goes, 3 sessions a day, he must be just caning them. You can't. Players can't cope with that amount of training in terms of it all being high intensity, hard work. It's always balanced.
But some would say that the players haven't coped. If you look historically at Bielsa's sides, they have tailed off towards the end of the season.
Yes.
And you look at it this season, and they're starting to tail off. It's a pattern that has historically stayed with him throughout his career.
Yeah, and that's obviously what everybody looked at the start of the season. We played them first game. We were hit by this kind of, everybody was waiting for it.
Yeah.
And we were punched in the face with
the
intensity of Leeds' play. This group pressing, this high intensity passing style. It wasn't just it wasn't just how they defended, but how they attacked. What you see with Norwich is certainly, I think they're really strong at the end of the games. I think there's also a little bit of the pattern you used to see with Paul Lambert, which is they don't give up. At the end of the game.
Agreed.
And that's not necessarily always down to physical fitness, although it's a major part to be able to execute it. You need to have a mental resolve to keep thinking you can get something at the end of a game.
Yeah.
How do you beat Millwall in the very last minute of injury time? It's because you have a belief that you can do it, and you have a manager who maybe decides, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to go and try and win a game, and certainly that was always Paul Lambert's style. At any of the clubs, which was he would always make aggressive, attacking substitutions, rather than just sit back and think I'll have what I have.
And Chris, that game particularly sticks out that Dave mentions there, the Millwall game.
Yeah.
In terms of, and we spoke about it, culture, philosophy.
I was in Barcelona running around the streets like a madman when we scored that goal.
Yeah, you got to look at commitment.
Yeah.
Why weren't you in Carolan?
I mean, absolutely.
27,000 other people were. You were off on
no
your holiday.
comment. I had to bugger off next week as well. It's shocking. Shocking.
But while you were in Barcelona celebrating,
yes,
there was a Norwich side sticking to their philosophy. They weren't punting it long into the box. They stuck to their guns. They stuck to what they knew.
Yeah.
And 99% of the time this season, that philosophy has paid off.
Absolutely, Jack. And what fascinates me, and Dave's very right in his comments with Paul Lambert. Paul would chuck 3, even 4 up top. And there's been times last season where me and you were hitting our heads against a brick wall going, how has the guy not made a sub? You know, it's 75 minutes, even 80 minutes, and he's still not made a sub. And us fans see subs as a solution to going winning a game of football, which is correct, I think, for 50 to 60% of the time. However, there is that magic 30-40%, which Dave's alluded to here, which is actually just pure mentality. We will win this game. We will break you down. We'll keep doing our bit. We're not going to change. And there's been countless times this season where we've just passed teams to death. And it just looks so simple. I think, interesting enough, I don't know how you two feel, but for me, still so super stressful to watch as a fan, because you're like, oh my God, he's not made a change. Because we're still in this traditional mindset of no subs equals, you know, it's not going to change. The game's not going to change. But that's what has really been interesting for me and has impressed me the most this season in relation to game management, is just purely that drive and motivation in the dying minutes to go and win a game of football, but almost with an arrogance of no. We're not going to stick a big lad up front. We're just going to play our game of football and we're going to pass you to death. And they do it.
Where do you sit with that, Dave? Because I sit next to Chris at football, and when I know, and when we haven't
bring a flag.
when we're drawing 1-1 and we haven't made a sub after 85 minutes, he is going mental. He's losing his head. Yeah. Where's the balance between stubbornness? And I suppose that happened last season when we were drawing 0-0 at home to Bolton, and it was turgid. And where do you then go to just belief in knowing what you're doing and doing it right, and it will pay off? Because that's a fine balance, isn't it? And luckily this season it's worked, because Daniel hasn't made many substitutions and he hasn't made many changes with his starting 11. And where is arrogance and just getting it wrong? And where would you sit? If you were Daniel, would you be making the subs earlier?
I don't know how he wants to prepare for games,
right,
and what his philosophy is going into each game. So I don't know what his game plan is as he goes in, what research he's done.
And I hope you don't know.
Yeah, well, you know,
because you're the enemy.
Well, you know, we know some things, Chris.
I'm joking,
you know,
mate.
But yeah, certainly. I think in how he goes about doing his subs are so difficult, because you hear fans behind you when you're sat on the bench going, "Get him on!" Because they think that the guy who's on there is like being terrible. What you got to realise is also there's
do you pull out your iPad at that point?
Yeah,
and go, look at the data.
This is why you make a sub. Well, I have done that in the past.
Have you?
I've done
really?
that first game of the season where you see players who are literally practically not trying, you know, and you know that they're so far below the levels that they should be. And
wow.
And you're literally putting it down to he's not trying, you know.
For Norwich.
I can't say who. But
no, I'm not saying, but have you seen it for Norwich, where players have gone on and not tried?
Well, who's gone on and not tried. I think Crouchy talked about it great in his podcast recently, where he says, you know, the mentality of a sub going on can be lots of different things. It can be a show you to the manager, or it can be, I'm not saving your bacon here.
Yeah, interesting,
you know? So, you know, that's always come on, and you're looking behind you, you're looking at your troops that are going to come on to support you, and you're hoping that they're going to do it. But if you know that one of them's really, really pissed off with you because of the selection, do you think he's going to go on and really change the game for you?
It's so true.
You know, and you know, I've seen fans in the past at Carrow Road who want a crowd favourite on the pitch.
Yeah.
But 95% of the time we see them at training and go, we're not putting this guy on the pitch.
Right.
You know, he's just, you know, he doesn't work hard enough in training. You know, we've got him, you know, and then the crowd can't understand why you don't want to put on the guy who is
There's
their
just
favourite.
so much more than that face value. You know, he's a top boy, as I say with Gary Doherty, for example.
But do you kind of get that from fans? Because obviously they don't see what you're seeing. They don't see the stats. Is there a sympathy with fans because they just love the club and they love the player that might be on the bench? They just want to see them, but you know something that they don't.
Yeah,
And it's tough, isn't it? Because
100%, you know, and you, especially when you make a sub for all the right intentions, you know. So we see a player who we think, right, he's probably flagging, he's been under the weather, he's been ill, he's had a knock in training, you know, we're going to put him on for 60 minutes, get that out of him, then we're going to make a sub. He's had a decent game, we want to sub him, and the fans go, what are you doing? Why are you subbing him? And it's actually none of the reasons that they need to know, or possibly would like to know, is the reasons that we have to sub the player.
Interesting.
So there's so many things that I think fans would be, if they came to a training ground and spent a week with us and saw the preparation that goes into getting a team to 3 o'clock and then pushing them out to sea and saying, go on then, you know, row the boat and get it to the destination. And then you see, you know, there's social psychological studies in sport that show that, you know, when you go into a group, the bigger the group is, the more people take effort away from the group. Okay. Now, the best teams don't lose effort. There's no leakage of energy. But the worse a team gets, the more energy leaks. You're not trying hard enough, so I'm not going to. He looks over, sees us two not trying.
The poison begins.
You know, so you have this idea of it called social loafing. And I've seen that. I've seen players literally just go.
So how do you make sure that doesn't happen then? Because obviously Norwich have got it right this season.
That's where your culture comes in. You know, they will stick. They will stick to the guns right to the end of the game.
I mean, that's what they've done with Mickey McGovern, haven't they? They've given Mickey McGovern a new contract, probably mainly on the basis of that he is a good egg to have around the camp. He's the Paul
Crichton of that we had. You know, Crichton was top lad around the training ground.
Top
I mean, you talk about Gary Doherty being a good lad. Crichton was on another level of good lad. You know, he was the heart and soul of the place.
I love that.
He was the guy who got fined. I think he got fined like 100 quid. Wasn't happy with it. Brought it to appeal, and every Friday morning we had a kangaroo court. So he was like really annoyed with it. It went to the judge. The judge found against him. Fine gets doubled, 200 quid. Crichton comes in the following week with £200 of 1p and chucks it onto the middle of the
and he's not
dressing
playing.
room.
There you go.
No, he doesn't care. You know, he was the same guy hiding the manager's hubcaps, and he was also causing devilment, putting boot polish on the physio's telephone. You know, so you need people like that around. You know, and they're huge parts of the dressing room. You know,
but I keep hearing this word culture, and I love it, and I do love it.
Yeah, you do love it.
But
I don't think you really love it, though.
I still don't get how you create a culture because it seems so overwhelming to do.
Right, well, so give you an example.
Yeah.
We've gone into clubs in the last few years and you speak to the players and said, when was the last time you had a night out as a team?
Right.
We haven't had one in 3 years. What? What, been out for a meal? Nope.
Right.
So what's the problem? Well, we try and organise it for this, and then that group don't come, and then we try to organise it there, and this group don't come. So literally players who don't spend any social time together.
Okay.
You know, so if they're not willing to spend a little bit of social time together, what's the chances on a Saturday?
Up on the pitch,
Saturday with like 5 minutes to go, and I need you to get back in. That you're not going to turn around. Now, going back to the team, 2003-04. My God, they were tight. You know, you only had to see that picture that was on social media recently. With some really bad dress sense. You know, I got caned for my dress sense, but I was always one higher in the ladder than Flem, you know. Poor lad, you know. I just got mad, you know. But, you know, you had that great culture going back to it, you know, because they stuck together off the pitch.
So it's nights out in the boozer, is that what you're recommending it, Dave?
Well, you know, sometimes they are the best things, you know, to kind of drive
for good culture.
Well, you know, it can be, you know, it doesn't have to be up front. Of course, back then we didn't have, you know, look at me old, didn't have camera phones, didn't have, you know, I saw him out there.
Yeah, sure.
The lads
Still had your notepad though.
Well, no, that's a new one.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Yeah, I got that one like 10 years ago.
But even, so you go into a club and
you put them all on a night out.
there's fractions in a team.
Yeah.
which I'm sure is common, how do you go from that to a fantastic culture? Or is it simply a case of we're scrapping you off, we're starting afresh?
It's very, very quickly trying to find out why are the fractions, you know, and who's causing it, and how can we break those down, you know?
Right.
Are there individuals who need to leave the club?
Yeah.
Is doing something different within training or, you know, socializing going to help that? Some people thrive on rules.
Right.
And hate other people like breaking rules.
Okay.
You know, so you find that there are lots of players of different pressure points.
Yeah.
You know, and what you got to find is what's his pressure point that causes him to be upset. So some people hate lateness. So when they see somebody late, that upsets them.
That's so rude.
But
It's
other
so
people-
disrespectful for your teammates, 100%.
But then other people are quite relaxed about timings. So when they see people getting irate about them being late, they're like, "What's your problem?
That's
know,
you.
You're not late. You were on time. I'm here." You know, so you've always got to blend those things together. You know,
I just find it so overwhelming hearing all of this stuff and thinking, how on earth do you
Where do you
get
start?
25 egos and highly paid players to fight in one direction? And that's why I have so much admiration for you guys and the Stuart Webbers of the world who somehow make that work, because I genuinely don't know where I'd start.
Listen, the best thing to do is you get people on side in the dressing room.
Yeah.
Because they then
that-
self-manage in the dressing room.
I know,
So
but you're saying that, but how do you do that?
Well, look, perfect example was when Mr. Dion Dublin walked into the room. Now, there's a guy who walks in who doesn't demand respect, but has respect by the fact he is Dion Dublin. And he's
Yeah.
walked in, and I distinctly remember him, and he'll tell the story. I was in a warm-up one day at Colney, and one of the younger players, who shall remain nameless, was just messing about. And he said, "Dave, can I have the group for a minute?" And I went, "Yeah, of course you can, Dion. You know, like, you're Dion Dublin. Why wouldn't you have the group? I'm not going to fight you for the group, like, you know."
Dion Dublin.
So he literally turns around and he just goes, "Oi, you, we don't accept that here."
And he's just joined.
Yeah.
Wow.
And he just said, "No, we don't accept that
You've just
here."
made me love Dion so much more. He's my
And-
favourite
and-
player
and-
by a million miles. And that's
Not
how
only
come.
was he the best dressed and took the best ever penalty I've ever seen. It's gone back to, I'll tell you that story in a minute. But he literally said that these are the boundaries and we don't cross them. And if you do cross them, and that applied to staff as much as the players, because staff who were a little bit, you know, younger staff who were a little bit ballsy or thought they were all that,
Yeah.
he could nail them into place as
So
well.
Dion was almost like the players' manager without being the manager.
Yeah, manager in the dressing room, you know. So, you know, and you've seen that. You go back to that team, you know, Flem and Malky. They didn't need a manager come in. They were managing the
So
dressing room.
true.
You know, and you go back even earlier than that, and you saw people like, you know, Matt Jackson was in there, or Ewan was in there.
And then we had Russ of recent times.
Yeah, exactly. You know, they self-managed the dressing room. When people stepped out of line, they got told. But going back to the story of Dion, I remember the last manager I worked for at Norwich. So we had a game in penalty, a game in training, and there was a penalty at the end to win it. And this manager said to Dion, "You used to taking pressure penalties, Dion?" And he just looked at him like, you know, kind of slightly disdainful look of pressure, and literally buried it in the top corner. Like, I mean, stanchioned it.
Yeah.
Just turned around and went. Yeah, the guy was immense, you know, and one of my great periods in sport ever was working with Dion and that group, because he was just a legend.
So he was just such a warrior on the pitch, wasn't he?
Yeah.
Oh,
Defence, attack, goals, leadership, just love
So
Dion.
good on Homes Under the Hammer as well. So good on Homes Under the Hammer. He knows a property development when he sees one.
Well, you know, he's got that eye for detail, you know.
He has.
He can see a gap, you know. He can
he can fill
exploit
that
it. Oh, he can, yeah. He can certainly fill that gap. Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
Goodness gracious. Let's move on. Quite
Yeah.
quickly.
Are there any
Filling gaps, God.
Are there any Dion Dublin type gap fillers that you see in the current Norwich City dressing room, where you go and you look at and think, wow, they can they can self-manage a dressing room.
Well, unfortunately, I don't know them well enough. But
But from looking on from the outside in, do you see them traits that Dion and others carried?
They're a real young group. This though, you don't see anybody of a really high profile.
Yeah.
Who would necessarily walk into a dressing room and say command respect because of what they've done in the game, really. I suppose Tim Krul has, obviously he's played
I'd say Tim Krul,
top level, but you've got people, who are now maybe not playing so much, like a Closer and that, who certainly should be doing that, and they've got other experienced players around the building, but it's been a real period of transition. It's become a lot younger squad, a lot more inexperienced squad, and they've done the talking on the pitch, so whether they're doing the talking in the dressing room or not, I don't know, but they're certainly doing the talking on the pitch.
So finally then, Dave, you've looked at this Norwich team, you've watched them a lot this season.
Yep.
Are they going up?
No. Are they winning the league? Come on.
Well, let's take the first point. Are they going up? Yes, I think they're going up. Okay. Obviously, I'm not a betting man. Well, actually, I'm a bit of a betting man. But
has your money been on them?
No, because we can't bet when we're in football.
Of course.
But I could now, because I'm not in football.
Yeah.
Ooh, nice.
No, I can't see them not finishing top two. They'd have to literally fall off now.
Yeah.
But then, funny things happen. Emi Buendia getting sent off recklessly. It's going to force a change into the team. Teams are built on cohesion and systems that work together and patterns that work, and they're proven to. What have they won? Like 11 out of 12 games or something like that. So you just don't want anything that upsets that, and that was a needless change. It's something that you didn't need to do. Everybody was in their slots. The subs knew they were subs. The team knew they were in the team. And the only thing that was going to change that was either an injury, which most of the time you're not going to pick up now unless somebody kicks you, or a suspension. And I hope it's not one of those things you come back to pinpoint, like I said about Louis Thompson, and an injury early in the season being something to catalyst positivity. Yes. I hope this isn't one that ends up being.
I think it's a really good point, Dave. And I think the thing for me though is that, and a lot of Norwich fans probably are aware of this, we've got some fantastic backup, and actually I think what it will do, I think it will be a positive catalyst, because I think that it will almost stop complacency, especially after rolling QPR over. I mean, rolling them over. It's boys versus men. It really was. And I think that almost that Buendia injury, in a weird sort of way, might make the team think, my God, we're missing Emi. That's a big loss. We need to work harder, boys. I think it'll keep them on their toes. I think that they'll obviously have to work differently in training, or do they?
No, I think at this stage you're just keeping your training.
You just slot someone else in. And that's someone, by the way, Champions League finalist for Borussia Dortmund, or a resurgent Mario Vrancic that's full of confidence, that literally destroyed Leeds United at Ellen Road. I mean, I'm not worried. But I think it will really help.
He's positive, Jack. He's positive.
It'll help the players.
Glass is half full.
Always.
Yeah. What do you think?
I think we'll be okay.
Good.
I think we'll be okay. I just think, as you say there, we faced different challenges this season, whether that be, I don't know, a team with Pookie not in the squad, or an injury. Look at Grant Hanley, for example. He got injured. We thought the end of the world was here.
Yeah, we did.
And a Ben Godfrey comes in. I just think there's enough players to slot in, to fill the gap, as we've mentioned.
Fill that gap.
A final point. You came down to Carrow Road with Stoke and beat us.
Yep.
Did you expect at that point to see a Norwich City squad 7 points clear at the top with 6 games to go? Or did you see a different team?
No. We had a lot of respect for the team from the fact of how they played in the 5 games before and won all 5 of them.
Yeah.
So you knew that they were a good team. We knew that they had a lot of possession and how they liked to play with it. We'd watched them go back like Bielsa, watched how they had honed their kind of system the year before. I knew that they'd do the same again.
Yeah.
What they're doing different though was just at a higher tempo.
Yeah.
And a couple of new players who come in that added a little bit more guile or energy to the team. They were less about almost being quite central with James Maddison and most things going through them, and being quite happy to go a bit more around the sides. But that kind of suited us at Stoke, because we were quite happy with you going down the sides, and when you came central, we just kept shifting you across the pitch. People like Joe Allen, Peter Tabo, quite quite comfortable
Yeah.
with things in front of them like that, no problem. You
So
know.
how did you set up and go, right, lads, this is how you beat Norwich today? I don't want other managers listening to this, but what were the weaknesses?
Well, it wasn't necessarily the weaknesses. You're always going to manage a game in a game. You know, you can start a game with a game plan, and that's generally your scaffold around how you're going to build a game. But then you have to respect the game for itself. That if it's not working, you're going to have to change. You know, and very quickly we found out like our attacking that day was just like non-existent. So it became of, well, how are we going to win games now? As a group of staff, we've had a lot of success going to clubs and being able to counter-attack.
Yeah.
You know, and waiting for those few opportunities where we can attack and we can attack with pace. So as a management team, we were quite comfortable that, okay, they're going to have a lot of the ball, we'll set up the counter.
Right.
You know, so we then had to change our pattern. We weren't playing well on the day, and then just hope that we could exploit one of those situations. Now, when you've got players of the ilk of Tom Ince, you know, who's able to cross a ball with pace and put it into a dangerous area for a defender to potentially make a mistake. Yeah, that's part of the game. You, as a defender, you've got to keep the ball out your own net. And unfortunately, that day for Tim, you know, he didn't. You know.
It just feels like when teams have maybe adopted that thought process and come to Carrow Road, they've sat back and waited, and we've just destroyed them with our attacking prowess, and then you go one down, and then you're having to chase the game, and then we open them up again. So I suppose as you mentioned there, though, players with the quality of Tom, it's not many teams have that, and it's just hopefully making sure that one chance comes and you take it.
Yeah, going back to what makes a good team, you can have a great team of individual stars, and if you get them all working perfectly in unison, they're hard to beat. You know, certainly Wolves last year were a team of stars who played really, really well. Or you can do what Norwich have done, which is take a lot of lesser lights and make them into a team. Yeah. You know, so the team is certainly greater than the sum of the parts this year. What Wolves have probably shown is they were a team of superstars that they were even bigger than that. You know, some of the players like Neves, you know, and some of the, unfortunately got to see his wonder strikes too many times last year, you know, including at Molineux. They can destroy you on their own. Yeah. And there's only a few teams over the years that you see can destroy you with one player, although they had quite a lot of one players that could do that. Norwich this year, yes, certainly Pookie, but you know, I think we got you at a good time in terms of he looked tired that day. He didn't really have an awful lot of spark, so that was, we just picked a good day for it.
Good. I think there's a part 2 to be had here.
Well, we haven't even got to the stories.
I know we haven't.
You know.
I know we haven't.
Making Adrian Forbes run around the pitch.
I think we'll get
Adrian Cook getting caught under the bench press.
Blimey,
that sounds painful.
Part 2 coming soon. It's got to be done.
Dave, it's been a pleasure, mate. Thanks so much for coming.
Cheers,
really appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Cheers, mate.
Thanks very much for watching. Please do feel free to leave us reviews on iTunes, preferably 5-star. And anything you want to plug? Finally, give you 30 seconds to plug something.
30 seconds to plug something.
I'm sorry.
Well, if I'm not back in football by July, I'll probably be running some fitness camps for those who do want to get fit for next season. So I might see you at a training ground near you.
You might have a client here.
Someone that makes Dean Ashton sweat big time. Now that's a no-brainer, isn't it, really?
Big Dean sweated big time. There you go.
Big D. There you go.
Another Big D.
See you later, guys. Thank you.